Bezos wishes would leave because he's losing $300 million a year on the Washington Post. One of my great sponsors is Conservatives for Lower Health Care Costs. One of their great spokespeople is former Congressman Ryan Costello. Congressman, you're from Chester County, so I'm taking a big risk here. I'm assuming you're an Eagles fan and not a Steelers fan, because if you're a Steelers fan, this call could be over in a hurry. Are you an Eagles fan?
For sure.
Okay, good God.
I should have worn my Eagles sweatshirt.
Well, I was afraid. We don't let Steelers fans. I'm from Cleveland. We don't let the Steelers people.
I should let you know, Hugh, since you mentioned Chester County, Saquon Barkley just moved to Chester County. Little known fact.
Well, I'm glad, and congratulations. You won a Super Bowl, and that's more than the Browns have ever done. But you're also a Villanova lawyer. Now, my old partner, Gary Walensky, told me that it was accredited by the ABA, but he never demonstrated those kinds of skills. Is it, in fact, accredited by the ABA?
It is, in fact.
All right. Ryan, tell us a little bit about Conservatives for Lower Health Care, and then let's talk about Big Pharma, and so that you're not surprised. I have said for years, my older brother, I call him Mycroft, scientist, toxicologist, worked for Big Pharma for years. He's retired. I love their drugs. I hate their lobbyists because they screwed us on Obamacare. So that's where I'm coming from. Tell me what Conservatives for Lower Health Care Costs is up to.
Sure.
Uh-oh. Are you frozen?
I froze up for a second. Are we okay now?
Yep, you're back.
Yeah. Look, Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs cares most specifically about keeping prescription drug costs stable and finding ways to lower the cost of prescription drugs. And what we found in a frustrating way is that a lot of the pharmaceutical trade associations are now suggesting that the way to lower the cost of prescription drugs is to somehow put more government regulations in place to those in the drug supply chain who actually drive down lower costs. As it may not be known to many, but it's kind of obvious, who controls the cost of the list price for pharmaceutical drugs? It's the pharmaceutical companies. And to your point, pharmaceutical companies, they innovate, they discover, they spend money on R&D, and it's led to a healthier society. So this is not pharmaceutical companies are just bad. It is, though, that pharmaceutical companies are pointing the finger elsewhere as to why drug costs are what they are, when in fact it's pharmaceutical companies that could lower costs. And so Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs seeks to apply free market principles, more competition into the marketplace in order to drive down the cost of drugs and push back against government mandates and more bureaucracy, which we think would only drive up the cost of healthcare.
Now, in the lame duck, Big Pharma's lobbyists. And again, I like to distinguish between the scientists and the hired guns. And the hired guns are fine. I mean, everyone's got to work. 100%. I don't mind lobbyists. I'm not a lobbyist, but lobbyists do good work. But they often, there are a lot of them. And it's not really a fair fight. During the lame duck, they tried to tweak the outgoing Congress into giving them a windfall. Is that still on the table?
It is. And when you hear talk of we need PBM reform or we need to eliminate the middleman, what they're basically saying is we don't want anyone, we Big Pharma, don't want anyone to negotiate with us in a manner that forces us to lower costs. And what PBMs do, in short, is they take health insurance plans from employers and consolidate them for more scale, and then go to pharmaceutical companies and say, instead of you saying this is $100 per script, we want it for $20. And PBMs have been very successful doing so. And one of the reasons why Big Pharma has turned their ire on PBMs is that PBMs have been very effective doing that. So now what's happening is they're spending tens of millions of dollars in order to convince policymakers to pass legislation for what they say would result in lower healthcare costs. But in fact, what it will do is take the savings that PBMs pass through to consumers, and instead those savings would just stay in the pockets of Big Pharma.
So I explain it to people this way. CVS is my PBM, and I use CVS for everything. And there are other PBMs. I've got nothing against any of them, but I've just been using CVS for forever.
Agree.
And they use their market size to demand breaks from the big pharma people, and they will pass them on to me as well as the longest coupons in history. Honest to goodness, they could save a lot of money if like CVS stopped printing out the long coupon. But
I don't even understand what they say.
I know. I just throw them away. It's like the this is not a bill stuff that I get from Medicare.
Yes.
So much weight. But they're in the marketplace, and they're big, and they got to be big to go against big pharma. So where are they going to attack? Are they going to attack the budget legislation? Are they going to Ways and Means? Where are they going to? Where's the big pharma lobbyist going to attack?
Yes. And before I get to that, let me just add one thing. There are a lot of PBMs in the marketplace. This is not legislation that would favor one PBM over another. It's not that sort of thing. And in fact, what we don't want is more regulations, because what that will do is lead to less PBMs in the marketplace, which means less competition. We want the more competition you have in the marketplace, there's a tendency to drive down costs over time. Where will this legislation find itself? It will find itself in one of two places. In the upcoming CR, right, which has to happen by March 14th, or we have a government shutdown. Or in the tax reconciliation package. By the way,
that's what I'm
huge credit to my former colleague, Speaker Mike Johnson, and the House Republicans for getting that budget done so that the House and the Senate now can compete and come out with the right product for tax reconciliation purposes. Huge credit to President Trump for what he's done over the past 45 days. And I'm also going to say Elon Musk, because this is a government that is now we have leadership in the government that is trying to rein in costs. It is messy business, right? If it was easy, it would have already been done. What we don't want to do is see legislation, be it through the CR, be it through reconciliation, which really has the unintended effect of providing more government into the healthcare system, which will ultimately lead to higher costs and more bureaucracy. It doesn't make sense, and frankly, it contradicts what President Trump did in his first term, and it contradicts what Republicans have been doing for over a decade, which is pushing back against more government regulation in the healthcare system. That leads to higher costs.
Let me ask you a related question on the reconciliation. The House got that bill through by one vote, the budget. Why doesn't the Senate just say, okay, stamp, done, let's get to work on the committees of jurisdiction?
Fair question. There's probably two reasons for that. One is more technical, one is more political. The technical question is it's not clear to me if the Senate can look at the extent of cuts and say that we can pass a sufficient number of policies and pass the Byrd rule and get it through the Senate procedures. It's really difficult for me to think that you can pass this reconciliation bill without the bill ultimately first starting in the Senate, right? Because you need to go through what's known as the Byrd bath, and you need to make sure everything complies. But I think the most important point, I'm a former House guy, is if the House had not passed this, you would have ended up with two reconciliation bills. It would have taken a lot longer, and the House really would have had very little, if any, say in what the end product would be, and rightfully so if they can't pass the budget. The second point is, I think, frankly, when it comes to some of the healthcare and Medicaid proposed reductions, a lot of senators were former governors. Senators are statewide, and so they have kind of a different lens through which they have to look at this. In the House, you're going to find probably 15 to 20 members that reside in California, New York, and New Jersey that need SALT relief. But in the Senate, there is not any senator in one of those high tax states, Illinois would be the other, that is worried about SALT relief the way that some of those House members are. So there are some differences that have to be fleshed out. I just ultimately think the Senate, it's going to be a Senate bill that leads the day. But at least having done what Speaker Johnson and the leadership team did, the House is at the table, and I think that that's very, very important.
But if they do something significantly different, if, for example, they jam in a pharma windfall, it's not going to make it through the House on the return trip, right? Don't they have to live within the confines that the House did?
I fear that it could, because pharma has done a really good job of diverting the message into suggesting that this is somehow good and will lower healthcare costs, which is complete nonsense. And when you get a big bill like this, people can people can ram in a lot of last minute things. The same reason why we don't like CRs and big omnibus bills is the same reason why something like this could find its way in. Look, pharma has a lot of muscle. Pharma spends a lot of money. And pharma, this is not necessarily a critique of lawmakers in as much as it is when you have that much money and you can put that much money online and in the media, you can confuse people. So look, I love your show. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, come back, Congressman. Just make sure you're wearing Eagles gear, not Steelers gear. PharmaWindfall.com for more details. Protect the PBM, protect your drug prices. Don't let Big Pharma have another win like they did in Obamacare. If you're not listening to The Verdict with Ted Cruz and his co-host Ben Ferguson, you're missing probably the most popular podcast in the conservative world. Good morning, good afternoon, Senator Cruz. I've moved to the afternoon.